Now we're going to go, that's verses 3 to 19 to 21. Yeah, go ahead. Mhm. I know that's why, like a lot of people say, do barbecue and grills and stuff. Because I'm afraid I just stuff like that. Anything dealing with fire, I got to think twice because, being in the military when we used to have to go to the gas chamber. Oh my goodness, you know, being a drill instructor, I had to go every cycle. I had to go every time we had 12 cycles in a year. 12 times I was at that gas chamber. Huh? The trainees to get them used to gas. If they go out to war, that's why they have the gas masks and stuff, you know. And I used to get so good at it, I hate to say it, if they really one of them privates did something that I didn't like, I would stand at the door and put my foot up and wouldn't let them out just to get back at them, because it didn't bother me. And we had to take off our mask, say our name and our social security number, seal it back, and then they'll let us out. And that gas ain't nothing to play with. That thing burns. And I mean, be jumping around and hollering. But it's just something that you get used to. And like I thought about this with the furnace, like this gas chamber thing they're doing now with that nitrogen gas. That's something that you don't play with because that'll kill you instantly. Like you don't have the right breathing apparatuses and stuff. That stuff is dangerous. But yeah, and like you said, the strongest one. And then they said the furnace was so hot that it killed him. He died because it was just that much heat that he ended up dying from it. So that's a good point. He said he had the strongest ones go, but they didn't put up an opposition because, like I said, their faith, like the title says, uh, their faith was just that strong. I'm going to go ahead to Daniel's friends protected. Daniel 3:2 to 25. Somebody want to read 22 and 3? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you just said that because the king was urged that the furnace be so overheated, the raging flames killed the men that that they had to put them in there. That heat was just so hot, and it just consumed them. They even died. But then again, it said, but the three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the furnace of blazing flames. And can you imagine? They just putting you into something that hot. You know, like I said, I can't do heat like that. It just ain't for me. Yeah. Over there. Okay, somebody read 24 and 25.
Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said unto his counselor, Did not we cast three men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. Yeah, 25. He answered and said, Lo, I see four men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God.
Now, just imagine. So now he's realized that, he put them in this furnace, but then I guess you can look in and see, and he's looking in and seeing not only three men walking around, but he's seeing four. And he said, I thought it was three of them. And then they said, yes. He said, well, why am I seeing four? And then the guy told him, he said, and the fourth one looks like the Son of God. So how, can you just imagine them just walking around and God walking around in the midst of them because nothing can touch them? And they said the king Nebuchadnezzar, he was astonished. Like something shocked you and you just jump up and all of a sudden, like, what? You know, he's seeing this and like, how is this possible? This fire has killed my people that put you in there, but here go these men. They ain't touched at all. They just walking around. This is calm. And he said he knew it was three of them that he put in there, but it's a fourth person in there. Where did this fourth person come from? Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. He did. 'Cause that's all. And that's a very good point because he was he was, like I said, he was a tyrant as a king. He was ruthless. The things that he did, and then to see the power of God Himself, that let him know that this was a God that was mighty and that was worthy to be worshipped in that form of fashion. And I think if you see something like that and how many people were in there and you see a fourth person, and nobody else can see that, well, what are you seeing? I don't see that. And a lot of times we look at things somebody else can see, but we can't see it for the life of us. And it's right there in our face, but we can't interpret it. And they said, what did they always say? Lean not to your own understanding because you don't know. This is the power of God. And like I said, we don't know. We might know there is a God. We know his power and what he can do. But to say that we know, you know, we know God, you know, this is a prime example. He made a believer out of him to show him their faith is stronger than your might. And the fact that he had them in there walking around and nothing touching them, I don't want to get too far into the lesson, but You know, this truly amazed him. And like you said, it let him know right now that they worship a mighty God and that nothing will befall them. Nothing that man can do will befall them because they are in the presence of God and God is right there with them. Okay, where are we at? Verse. Okay, our third outline out of the fire, Daniel 3:26 through 28. Let's go to um, verse 26. Somebody will read that.
26. Then Nebuchadnezzar then prepared, approached the door of the furnace of the blazing fire, and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. 27.
Yes.
And in the straps that, and what? Satraps, I'm sorry, you're right. Satraps, the preferred, the perfect governor, and the king's counselor gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of these men. Their hair on their heads were not singed, their tunics were not scorched, not even the smell of fire came from them.
You want to go ahead and read
28.
28?
Nebuchadnezzar said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trust in him. They disobeyed the king's commandment and yield up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God.
So, if you look from our reading, it says, the scene is not making any sense to the king. From his safe viewpoint, now listen, his safe viewpoint, because that furnace was so hot, he wasn't going to even get that close to it. So it says, he stands and screams at his officials, who are also in a safe space. Did we not cast 3 men into the furnace? So, just going back to that. And then, I can imagine they looking at him. What are you talking about? You just saw us put these 3 people in there. Yep. And of course, his officials agreed that there were only 3 men thrown into the configuration. However, Daniel does not indicate that the cabinet members noticed what was happening in the furnace. Also, it seems that only Nebuchadnezzar realized what was happening. He the only one that saw that 4th person. And then the men of Nebuchadnezzar's staff were used to coddling the king and agreeing with his commands. So anything that he said, basically, they went with it, even though they knew it was wrong, and their faith and their principles of what they had already known and learned about God, just to keep him happy and not to feel his wrath, they just went along with him. And then it says, to his horror or bewilderment, the king directed his men to look at what was going on in the furnace. These men were supposed to have been consumed by the flames, yet they were untied, walking around and seemingly celebrating rather than crying in agony. And that's what it says in verse 26. He went close to the furnace and spake and said, Call their name, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth, come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. And then all it says, all the governors, all these people standing there looking at them, and I guess they thinking they should be burned to a crisp. They look just like they looked when they went in. They came out looking the same way. Nothing was wrong. It said their bodies, whom bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair of their heads singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. And if you anywhere by a burning flame, or even like, when you do a barbecue, you come back in, you smelling all smoky and everything. Your clothes, your hair, and like if you get too close to a fire, your hair, you can hear that zzz, your hair frying, your head on fire. And they came in there and they looked at them and nothing was wrong with them. And he said they were walking around in there praising God, just having them a good old time, when he figured they should have been screaming and hollering in agony, but none of that was happening because God was right there in the midst. And like he said, he saw a 4th person that looked like the Son of God. So that's who was there. And like you said, that's when he realized that there was who their God was, who they worshiped, because they were staunchly against him. Anything that he tried to do, these three, they followed Daniel. They didn't follow what the king said because they knew everything he was trying to make them do was incorrect. It was wrong. So then, 28, then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have sent his angels and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any God except for their own God. So here, now he is speaking and he tell them, he said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He said, because now he sees the power of this God. Just imagine you push somebody into a burning flame, and then you look here, they walk out the same way you push them in there. Only God can do that. Ain't nobody, no mankind. They could douse you with water, but you still gonna have some results from that fire. But with the grace of God, these three men, they were in there, and nothing was wrong. Like I said, they were walking around, probably singing, giving glory to God, because they knew the fire could not touch them. And here he is. I think he was in shock to see, like I said, he was from a safe distance, peeping in, looking, and seeing that nothing was happening to them. So now, this gonna make you think, what is going on here? Is this an illusion, a dream, or is this really happening? And that's when he called them out, and he saw nothing was wrong with them. Said not a hair on their head had been singed, because the fire did not consume them by the grace of God, and God was in there with them the whole time. So he ain't gonna let nothing happen to his faithful servants. And he was right there. So that, like you said, Sister Washington, it made a believer out of him. It made a believer out of him. And if you still, to his horror, let me see, who was that one? Yeah, it says, however, the factor that held Nebuchadnezzar in awe was the addition of the fourth person that had become part of the celebration with the Hebrew men. Noticing the appearance of the fourth person, Nebuchadnezzar declared that it must be the Son of God. So, who else gonna be in there walking around in a hot furnace? God said that angel, and he said it looked like the Son of God. Yeah, I'll Google it. That's a good thing. Okay, Michael and Gabriel are recognized as the archangels in Judaism and Islam, and by most Christians. Raphael mentioned in the Book of Tibet is also recognized as the chief angel in the Catholic, Lutheran, and Anglican and Eastern Orthodox churches. Only two of God's angels are directly named in the Bible: the archangel Michael and Gabriel, God's special messengers. So the two angels must be special angels. Yeah, but it does talk about in the Old Testament book of Daniel, Michael is called one of the chief princes, which might suggest that there are more than one archangel. In some places it says there's up to seven, but the main two that they talk about in the Bible are Michael and Gabriel. So that's something that we need to look up. Who did what? Which one did? So let me see. Yahweh extends the same protection to Nebuchadnezzar as he has to the Hebrews. Nebuchadnezzar does the incredulous. He orders Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to come out of the furnace and subsequently out of the fire. As young men emerge from the flames, they were inspected by high-ranking officials of the king's cabinet. In their inspection of the youths, probably the safety of the confines of the court, the Babylonian officials were aghast and bewildered at the condition of the men. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not singed nor laced with smoke. Their garments and did not even have the smell of being near. It says Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful king in the world, had been neutered, and his response was to acknowledge the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, even going so far as to issue blessings upon Yahweh, who the king recognized as the highest power than he. So that's it. He eventually realized that there was somebody higher than me. And I always tell people, you have a boss, they have a boss, and then there's another boss, but there's the boss. And if he stopped to it, it's only my firm belief, you're only going to be able to do so much before God steps in and puts you in. And then, I've seen it happen tons of times. People do terrible things, especially in there. I mean, I hate to say it, that's a cutthroat business. It's a cutthroat business. I have seen it. As an EO advisor, we used to have to do programs like this is African American History Month, and we would have to do a program based on African American history. And a lot of people go, I don't have time to go to those shows and them programs. As soon as you say the general gonna be there, they find out the general there, you got them RSVPs coming in like this. Everybody is coming. Because now you sitting in the presence of the general, and he wants to see who in his staff is supporting. So like I said, there's always a boss, but there's only one boss. He's the top. He's the top in that area. And what he says, go. And like it says, with God, Nebuchadnezzar realized that there is a God higher, a power higher than him. Each branch of service has a commanding general. Maybe each fleet has a commanding admiral. I think his name is Brown. He's a black guy. He's the chief of staff for the military now. He's over all the military branches. They answer to him. And it's an Air Force guy, a black guy at that. But Lloyd Austin, he is Secretary of Defense. The generals answer to him. Under the president. Yes. Mm-hmm. He back in position. Ain't nothing gonna happen. Yeah. Like I said, like I said, everybody got to answer to somebody, and then Joe Biden is the top, and then everybody follows down, and it's God. So that's how the succession goes, and the same thing in the church. You have God, the pastor, then nobody should overtop anybody in the military. And then, like said, for the Marvelous. Go. Mama, you remember when he was here? Was you here when he came and they did the ordination for the deacons? And he would say he's like the top dog in the church. And, I listened. I laughed. I'm like, this man is something else. If you would have listened to everything he was saying, it was just funny. But he was serious. And yeah. So like I said, everybody is going to answer to somebody, but we should only praise and give honor to one person, no mankind. Even though man can do so much and everything, but it all comes through the grace of God. And I'm a firm believer. It's through the grace of God that these people can do some of the things. Even I wouldn't say the evil that they do because that's on them. But the good things that happen in the world, like you have the doctors that can save lives. You have these builders that can build these astronomical buildings at home. That comes through God. You know, you can study, you can read, you can write, you can comprehend, but to actually put this stuff in motion, you got to have some kind of backing from a supreme being. Yeah, he uses all of us in one way and another. God has a purpose and a use for all of us. And the least little thing you do, you might think is nothing, but it's a praise to God that we would take our time to do something like this for somebody. That's why, my grandmama was always say, you watch who you talk to and how you talk to people because you don't know who that is. You could be entertaining an angel of God. And, she used to always tell us that you be very careful how you treat people because you don't turn out to be in your life. You always be told, never burn bridges you're going to have to cross again because you're gonna see it again in your lifetime. Any more comments? Yes. Hmm. Yes. Right. We all got a fire. All the time. And like I said, we walk in the footsteps of God. We don't walk, we don't walk ahead of him. We walk in the footsteps of God. So if he's always ahead of us. And like she said, everybody gonna have their tribes, their tribulations in life. No one is bigger than the other. It may be to you because it's happening to you, but somebody else can have something just as detrimental happening to them. And like I said, you would never know it just by looking at them because they put on this appearance. And you think, you know, well, that ain't nothing, but it means everything to that other person. And that's why I say we need to be considerate, kind, and always listen before we speak. Let the person say what they want to say, because just to have a listening ear and have somebody say something spiritual or godly to you, that just makes a whole world of difference to some people. And just to hear a kind word, I lift a lot of a burden off of some people because I think a lot of that leads to suicide. You know, People, they feel so left out, so alone. Nothing is going right in their life, and if you have somebody that just talk to them, say something kind, you don't know, it could just change their whole outlook and meaning on life. So, like she said, everybody gonna go through a fire, and deal with them flames one time or another. Because, like they say, life is not a piece of cake. Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. Like I said, life lessons. We all gonna learn them, and like I said, what we learn and we apply, like he said, it'll help somebody else because they'll see the situation that you went through. It might stop them from making the same mistake, or might direct them in another direction, to lessen that burden off of them. So that is so true. We are all going to go through something. Yes. You gain strength. Yep. And like you said, when you got to be broken, when they get them wild horses, what do they always say? They got to break horse to make that horse obey. So that's true. Our lesson in life, we have to be brought down to our lowest, and then God is going to eventually build us back up. We're stronger, yeah. Because then I think we'll realize that there's a supreme being that is going to bring us back up, not mankind. Because mankind can only do but so much, but I think a touch from God will make the whole difference in our lives. Oh, they're gonna tear you down. Mankind gonna be the one to tear you down. Yeah, they're gonna build you back up, but it's gonna be at a cost. It's gonna be at a cost because now I did something for you. Now you got to do something for me. But with God, all God asks for is your attention, your time, your respect, and to worship and know that He is the one and true God. That's all He gonna ask for. So, do we have any more comments, questions? Okay, let us stand to be dismissed. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to come together today and enjoy such a great lesson that we all have learned, that we are going to go through things. We are going to stand in our own fire. But through your grace and mercy, we will also come out in a better form, fashion, and with more knowledge and awareness of who exactly you are. God, I ask that you bless all those that are traveling to their destinations, to their churches, or to their homes. Let those